A child meets Audrey the giant, and the moment says everything: wonder, disbelief, and pure joy. In the 1970s, one photograph captured how larger-than-life legends could make the world feel impossibly magical. In 1973, two American icons shared one frame: painter Norman Rockwell and Colonel Harlan Sanders. It wasn't just a portrait, it was a meeting of nostalgia, storytelling, and the faces behind two enduring pieces of Americana. Before the White House, before tragedy, there was summer in Newport. In 1953, John F. Kennedy and Jacqueline Bouvier smiled at their reception, unaware history would someday remember them as American royalty. They died around 800 BC, but time refused to separate them. When archaeologists uncovered the Hassanlu lovers in 1972, they found not just remains, but one final embrace preserved across 2,800 silent years. In a Delhi refugee camp in 1949, women celebrated amid upheaval after partition. This photograph holds resilience in plain sight, families displaced from Lahore, still gathering strength, dignity, and moments of joy after unimaginable loss. On July 5th, 1924, baseball hero Babe Ruth chased a foul ball into Griffith Stadium's unforgiving wall. One collision left him unconscious, reminding fans that even legends sometimes paid dearly for spectacle. In the mid-1920s, actress Jean Arthur posed beside a St. Bernard, turning a simple portrait into something warm and timeless. Hollywood glamour met canine charm, and the camera adored both equally. In 1928, Colleen Moore and Lawrence Gray stepped into the playful world of OK, where jazz-age romance, studio polish, and silent era sparkle still lingered in every carefully staged frame. In May 1927, model Marion Morehouse transformed fashion into performance: riding outfit, Macintosh, bowler, and whip perfectly arranged. The photograph feels less like clothing and more like a carefully choreographed portrait of modern elegance. In 1929, Fay Wray posed for the camera, years before giant monsters made her unforgettable. Even here, before cinematic legend fully arrived, she carried the kind of presence old Hollywood could never teach. Daytime fashion in the 1930s balanced elegance with restraint, tailored lines, practical glamour, and quiet confidence. These looks weren't just clothes. They were part of a world learning how to appear composed through uncertainty. In 1933, actress Maureen O'Sullivan posed with a beach ball, turning carefree leisure into studio glamour. It's playful, polished, and unmistakably from an era when Hollywood sold sunshine as expertly as fantasy. Jean Harlow's 1930s fashion was pure silver screen alchemy: sleek silhouettes, confident styling, and a presence impossible to ignore. In every photograph, she looked less like a trend follower and more like the reason trends existed. In the 1930s, Bette Davis wore fashion with the same force she brought to the screen: sharp, poised, and impossible to overlook. Even still photographs seemed to bend around her personality. In 1937, Anna May Wong sat for photographer Nicholas Murray, and the result feels luminous. It's not just a portrait. It's a reminder of a star Hollywood never fully deserved, yet never forgot. In 1937, photographer Erwin Blumenfeld created La Pudeur, also known as The Shame. It's haunting, elegant, and unsettling. A surreal image where vulnerability becomes art. And mystery lingers longer than explanation. Lingerie photography in the 1940s sold elegance more than provocation, soft lighting, careful poses, and a sense of wartime-era glamour. Even intimate fashion was presented through the polished lens of classic studio sophistication. In 1946, Jane Russell posed for a Kodachrome promotional photograph, every detail glowing with post-war Hollywood polish. The image feels larger than life, exactly as studios wanted their rising stars to appear. In mid-1940s Florida, a woman stands with flowers at Terracea Island Farms, preserved in Kodachrome. The colors feel almost unreal, but the mood is simple: sunlight, agriculture, and a quiet portrait of American abundance. In 1945, the Jack Pine Gypsies paused at Mount Rushmore, their motorcycles lined beneath stone presidents. This wasn't just a road trip photo, it captured the restless spirit that helped shape the legendary Sturgis Rally's beginnings. On September 12, 1956, Zsa Gabor appeared on stage at Las Vegas's Riviera Hotel. Under contract and under lights, she embodied the era when glamour and nightlife were practically the same performance. René Jacques photographed the Seine in Paris around 1950, at Bateau Lavoir near Quai des Grands Augustins. It's a cityscape filled with quiet movement, where post-war Paris still looked like poetry drifting across water. In the 1950s, Anne Francis posed for Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, her publicity portrait polished to perfection. Studio photography didn't just sell films, it manufactured stardom, and Francis looked born to survive that machinery. In 1977, Carrie Fisher sat on a New York fire escape as Star Wars neared completion. Between anonymity and global fame, this photograph caught her in the final calm before cultural immortality. In February 1954, Marilyn Monroe performed for troops in Korea, bringing warmth and spectacle to a distant military audience. The Kodachrome images reveal a star carrying Hollywood glamour into the shadow of war. In 1991, Jaleel White, Mark Wahlberg, and Will Smith shot Hoops together, a snapshot from that strange moment when sitcom fame, rap stardom, and future superstardom briefly shared one court. In Sarajevo, September 1992, a young Bosnian girl waited beside a funeral service, cigarette in hand and rifle nearby. The photograph captures a childhood interrupted where war had rewritten what growing up looked like. In April 1978, Margaret Thatcher toured Isfahan, still a year away from Downing Street. For one Iranian security officer, the assignment became memorable for all the wrong reasons. In 1977, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Hugh Hefner, and Wilt Chamberlain gathered at the Playboy Mansion, three larger-than-life figures sharing a moment in one of celebrity culture's most infamous addresses. In 1988, 33-year-old Al Roker stood on the edge of bigger things. Long before he became a familiar morning presence, this photograph captured the broadcaster still climbing toward national recognition. On the set of Labyrinth, Jennifer Connelly performed one of her own stunts while David Bowie looked on. Behind the fantasy, there was still the careful work of making movie magic believable. In 1986, Andre the Giant relaxed in a hot tub, looking oddly ordinary despite being anything but. That contrast made him unforgettable, an impossible figure somehow still existing in everyday moments. In the 1980s, the Beastie Boys claimed a back booth at Hamburger Hamlet on Sunset Boulevard, surrounded by spandex, heels, and hairband excess. It's a perfect collision of rap, irreverence, and decadent club scene Los Angeles. In 1947, Lucille Ball appeared on color film, and suddenly the past feels startlingly close. Before television legend hardened into nostalgia, she was simply a vivid, charismatic woman caught in light. In the 1930s, Bette Davis seemed born for black and white photography. Every portrait carried that unmistakable stare, intelligent, severe, and magnetic enough to make stillness feel like a dramatic performance all its own. In 1994, photographer Michelle Bourcard captured Angelina Jolie before global superstardom fully settled in. The image feels intimate and electric, a glimpse of someone already carrying the gravity of future fame. In 1953, Gary Cooper in Acapulco looked every bit the old Hollywood ideal, relaxed, handsome, and impossibly composed. Even on holiday, some stars never stopped appearing as though they belonged to the screen. On the set of The Birds in 1962, actress Tippi Hedren posed with a raven named Buddy. Hitchcock's world always blurred elegance and unease, and even the behind-the-scenes photographs carried that tension. In 1944, a young Queen Elizabeth II appeared not as a monarch, but as a wartime princess. The image feels striking because history hadn't crowned her yet, though destiny already seemed unavoidable. In 1994, The Undertaker and Macho Man Randy Savage chatted casually, proving even wrestling's most mythic personas occasionally stepped out from the spectacle and simply talked like colleagues. In 1985, Grace Jones and Christopher Walken shared a frame that feels almost too cool to be real. Two singular personalities, one photograph, and an atmosphere only the 1980s could produce. In 1961, surfers in San Diego put on suits to save surfing, turning beach culture into public protest. The image is unforgettable because rebellion arrived not barefoot, but dressed for the kind of respectability authorities expected. By 1999, the band Kansas carried decades of arena rock history behind them. One photograph from that year feels like a checkpoint, proof the soundtrack of another era was still very much alive. On December 5th, 1970, Elvis Presley attended a friend's wedding. Removed from stadiums and screaming crowds, the king appears almost ordinary, just another guest, briefly stepping outside the machinery of his own legend. In the 1990s, Angie Everhart embodied the era's glossy celebrity style, confident, unmistakable, and camera-ready. Her photographs feel like snapshots from a decade obsessed with beauty, fame, and larger-than-life personalities. As Wonder Woman, Linda Carter became more than a television star. She became a symbol. Every image from that era carries the same effect: strength, grace, and the kind of charisma that survives generations. In 1964, Anne Margaret enjoyed her Norton Atlas 750 twin motorcycle, revealing a side of stardom built on speed and independence. It's the kind of photograph that makes celebrity look genuinely exhilarating. On July 9, 1976, Patti Smith took the stage at Central Park's Schaefer Music Festival. The image catches punk poetry in motion, as if New York itself had briefly found a microphone and voice. On July 4, 1976, Gerald Ford and Betty Ford watched bicentennial fireworks from the White House balcony, a presidential tableau framed by celebration, spectacle, and a nation marking 200 years. On July 4, 1976, the United States celebrated its bicentennial with fireworks, parades, and patriotic pageantry. For one summer day, history wasn't buried in textbooks. It was exploding above city skylines in red, white, and blue. On July 8, 1976, Queen Elizabeth II looked over the Magna Carta in the Capitol Rotunda. It was a meeting of symbols, monarchy, democracy, and one medieval document still haunting modern ideas of power. On July 3, 1976, the Beach Boys played a bicentennial concert at Anaheim Stadium. The real headline was Brian Wilson's return, a long-awaited step back into the spotlight after years of absence. On July 7, 1976, President Gerald Ford danced with Queen Elizabeth II at a state dinner. Diplomacy rarely looks glamorous, but for one photograph, politics moved with the rhythm of ceremony. On July 3, 1976, outside a Two Guys store in Middletown, New Jersey, ordinary America carried on beneath bicentennial fever. Sometimes history isn't found in leaders or concerts, but in parking lots and everyday errands. On July 7, 1976, Jefferson Starship performed in Central Park, bringing arena rock energy into the middle of Manhattan. It's one of those summer images where music, city life, and memory seem inseparable. On July 7, 1976, 119 women joined West Point's Corps of Cadets for the first time. The photograph marks more than a class entering school. It captures an institution being forced to imagine itself differently. On July 1, 1986, Prince premiered Under the Cherry Moon in Sheridan, Wyoming, after an MTV contest. For one unlikely night, a small town briefly became the center of Prince's cinematic universe. On July 8, 1986, Diana, Princess of Wales, visited Coventry, carrying that familiar blend of warmth and scrutiny. Even in still photographs, she seemed to exist between public ritual and private pressure. On July 4, 1986, President Ronald Reagan delivered a speech on Governor's Island. The setting was patriotic, ceremonial, and perfectly timed for a country still in the mood to celebrate itself. In 1992, Goldie Hawn appeared in her kitchen, a movie star framed by domestic calm. The photograph feels intimate because it swaps Hollywood spectacle for something far rarer: celebrity in a genuinely ordinary room. In 1997, Liv Tyler looked like the decade itself, cool, reflective, and impossibly photogenic. Some portraits document a person. Others capture an era's entire mood in a single expression, a carefully lit frame. In February 1966, Army nurse 2nd Lieutenant Roberta Birdie Steele served in South Vietnam. Her photograph stands quietly against war's noise, reminding us that military history is also shaped by care, endurance, and unseen labor. In 1963, photographer Bill Ray captured Natalie Wood in a portrait full of old Hollywood glow. She appears luminous, but there's also something fleeting there, like fame already understood its own fragility. In 1964, Anne Margaret posed with an ocelot because mid-century celebrity photography often preferred glamour with a touch of danger. The result is equal parts elegance, curiosity, and pure period eccentricity. In 1957, Hawaii, a woman in a red beach dress smiled for the camera, flippers in hand, preserved on Kodachrome. The image feels playful and sunlit, like tourism, fashion, and post-war optimism all colliding. In 1954, costume tests for Sabrina helped shape one of classic Hollywood's most elegant screen identities. Before audiences saw the finished magic, the camera was already deciding exactly how enchantment should look. On the set of a film, A.H. stands half hidden behind the machinery of storytelling. Even without the full context, the image feels familiar. One more glimpse of cinema being assembled from patience, performance, and illusion. Patrice Lumumba's words still burn with defiance. They call us savages because we refuse to be slaves. In that sentence, Congo's struggle becomes heartbreakingly clear. A fight over dignity, memory, and who gets to write history. In the 1930s, dancer Katherine Dunham moved with a force that reshaped performance itself. Photographs from her prime feel alive because they captured not just beauty, but revolution in motion. In the 1910s, an autochrome photograph showed Afro-French soldiers cooking during World War I. It's a rare, human glimpse inside military life, men between battles, making a meal while history thundered around them. In the 1920s, couples posed together with the seriousness early photography often demanded. Yet beneath the stillness, these images preserve something timeless: affection, style, and the quiet pride of simply being seen side by side. In 1963, Pelé and Eusebio met in a friendly between Brazil and Portugal. One photograph captured more than a match. It brought two footballing legends into the same moment of history. On July 8, 1950, radio listeners met tales of the Texas Rangers for the first time. It arrived in living rooms as adventure, law, and frontier myth, all carried through the invisible power of sound. In 1954, Grace Kelly was photographed at MGM Studios, already carrying the cool composure that made her seem less like a movie star and more like some carefully sculpted ideal. During World War II, people still found ways to laugh, play, and hold onto ordinary life. That's what makes these wartime images so striking. They preserve joy in a moment. History usually remembers only for suffering. In July 1937, boxer Freddie Steele trained with a jump rope, sharpening the speed behind his feared nickname, the Tacoma Assassin. The photograph is all rhythm, discipline, and the quiet violence of preparation. A Romani father stands at a cattle market near Seville, his presence carrying the weight of labor, trade, and tradition. It's the kind of photograph that invites questions about movement, identity, and survival across generations. Around 1920, Feline's department store rose over Boston as a monument to urban commerce. The facade tells its own story of department stores as cathedrals of consumption where modern city life learned how to shop. In 1930s Greenwich Village, the nightclub had already lived one life as a speakeasy before continuing into the 1950s. Its story feels distinctly New York: reinvention, nightlife, and survival through changing eras and appetites. In spring 1942, two little girls arrived at Colorado's Granada Relocation Center before being sent west to a Japanese internment camp. The photograph is devastating because childhood appears here under the shadow of government fear. In 1942, at the Granada Relocation Center in Amache, elementary children landscape the grounds outside their barracks school. The image is gentle on the surface, yet impossible to separate from the injustice surrounding it. On July 8, 1944, drummer and Allman Brothers co-founder J-Mo Johansson was born in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Decades later, he would become the last surviving original member of a band that changed Southern rock. Between July 8 and 12, 1974, David Bowie recorded shows at Pennsylvania's Tower Theater for the Diamond Dogs tour. Those performances became David Live, a snapshot of Bowie in constant reinvention. On July 3, 1930, session guitarist Tommy Tedesco was born in Niagara Falls. You may not know his face, but you've almost certainly heard his work echoing through countless hit records. On July 7, 1913, blues pianist Pinetop Perkins was born in Belzoni, Mississippi. After an arm injury ended his guitar path, he turned to piano and helped shape the sound of electric blues. In Eric Romer's 1967 film La Collectionneuse, desire and detachment unfold beneath the summer sun. Even a single still from it feels charged with the film's signature tension between beauty, freedom, and emotional distance. Soapy. Smith built a criminal empire on charm, deception, and performance in the American West and Alaska. His 1898 Skagway photograph endures because it shows the face of a man who sold confidence itself. Before Blondie, Debbie Harry sang with psychedelic folk group The Wind in the Willows. By late 1966, her path toward punk immortality had already quietly begun, even if few noticed. In early 1942, Japanese pilots received a pre-flight briefing on the deck of carrier Zukaku. The scene is calm, almost routine, which makes it haunting. History often pauses briefly before the engines begin roaring. Today, we remember Curly Howard, who passed away in 1952. Long after the laughter first echoed, his face still carries the strange magic of comedy, joy preserved alongside the sadness time always leaves behind. In 1977, Carrie Fisher sat on a New York fire escape as Star Wars neared completion. It's a portrait of someone poised between ordinary life and permanent cultural mythology.